All right, what's up, guys? It's GSR here. Welcome to understanding advanced learning when it comes to combo strings, I guess you can call it. I'm gonna show you guys some things that I think would help out a lot of people, especially if you're trying to take Mortal Kombat seriously for some weird fucking reason. There's a lot of things that can happen off of one situation, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go in complete detail showing you what can happen. Obviously, proximity OSing can happen. Duck OSing could possibly happen in these situations. Flawless blocking OSing could possibly happen in these situations, and I'm very aware of option selecting. It's just that I don't do it because I would rather think on my own instead of depending on a flaw within the game that the developers overlooked. And that's just my personal opinion. So we're not going to talk about option selecting, even though it could exist in these situations that I'm about to show you here. So we're going to focus on Jax's standing one, which is good for a somewhat stagger, mainly because it's just +1 on block. Normally staggers consist off of, less block stun and you being safe on block, where your character can recover a little bit quicker to where they could possibly go for a throw. So like a prime example is like Johnny standing one right here. He doesn't have a lot of block stun on it, right? As you can clearly see, Jax isn't really super stunned or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like he basically almost recovers almost immediately, right? But it's a good stagger because there's not a lot of block stun, and then on top of that, like it's plus on block. So they try to do something stupid, like they could get comboed, they could get baited. I could probably like whiff punish them or something like that. Like, they try to, you get the idea. But anyway, that's besides the point. So, right. Um, if the Jax player is timing their normals correctly and stuff, this is when a lot of these things start to happen, right? So as a defending player that's defending against Jax, on the opposing side, you have to think to yourself, what are ways that I can get out of this? Now, keep in mind, Jax is standing one is 8 frames in startup, and he's +1 on block if he manages to get this out on block. Just in general, right? Whether he jails you and then goes into it, or you're minus enough to where you respect because you're afraid of his 9 frame forward 3, right? Or his 12 frame forward 2, whatever the case may be, right? So he goes for this normal, right? And like I said, his startup time is 8 frames on startup, and he's +1 on block. So if he goes for a double standing one, his second standing one will no longer be 8 frames. It'll come out as 7 frames because he can move a frame before you can, right? So his second standing one will stuff a lot of different options that Johnny Cage has access to, and I'm talking about mainly standing options. So since his second standing one is 7 frames, what does that mean exactly? As you can clearly see, Jax basically can trade with Johnny on the 7, even though Johnny Cage's standing one is 7 frames, right? Now, Johnny Cage's hit stun, okay, is a lot shorter. So that would mean that, I would have to block. So this is not a good trade for Johnny. This is not a trade that you would want for Johnny, right? So this is benefiting Jax greatly, right? So if you pay attention to how they're reacting to the hit, right? Jax recovers, as you can clearly see, right? But Johnny does not, right? See how Jax goes back into his stance and Johnny doesn't just yet? So I would have to respect here because he has a few frames over me, right? So you got to ask yourself, okay, what can I do here, right? So trading is not a good idea here, right? Obviously, if I go for a standing 2, he stuffs that option out. If I go for like any normal, if I go for like a reversal, like he's shutting out a lot of my standing normal, right? So that's not good, right? That's not good at all. So what can I do here? It's all about problem solving and figuring out what you can and cannot do, right? So we know if we walk backwards to try and create new neutral ground and make him whiff that normal, and keep in mind his recovery is 14 frames, so that's not a bad normal, right? So we can't walk backwards, okay? So that option's out of here. We cannot neutral jump. That's an anti-air. We cannot forward jump. That's an anti-air. We cannot back jump. That is a anti-air, right? We cannot trade because that trade will not be good for us because Jax wins that trade, right? And then on top of that, he has the same startup time as Johnny Cage is standing one. So he's shutting out 3 options that we have here, right? So one of our options is the backdash, and we can neutral duck. And the other option is the flawless block. It's possible to fatal blow if he commits into the full string. And those are our options here, right? So we neutral duck, right? As you can clearly see, easy KBs is off. So we think he's going to stagger the second standing one. We can actually go for some form of combo on the Jax player, and as you can clearly see, he will get comboed, right? Or we can go for a regular combo, as you can clearly see here, and he will get fucked up, right? If we know that he's going to go for another standing one, even if he was a commit to the 4th string, we still would get that punish, right? We know that we can backdash, right? So if you do an instant backdash, right, into a standing 1 or standing 2, this is the reward that you get. Another reward that you get, especially if Jax is staggering, right, is that you can actually take it upon yourself, right, to go for a basically like a reversal KB, right, which is Johnny Cage's nut punch, right? And as you can clearly see, Jax will get punished. Now, since the Jax player knows about this situation, right, that can occur, right, in a match, this is where things get real spicy. Let's see here. The Jax player is like, okay, well, what happens if I go for the 4-3, right? Now, if everything is timed correctly, right, it's going to be very difficult for the Jax player, right, to fuck this up, right? And it's going to be very difficult for the Johnny Cage player to get out of this, right? So if I try to walk backwards, as you can clearly see, I cannot walk backwards, right? So that mid that Jax has is a really good way of checking whether or not I'm going to neutral duck. As you can clearly see here, I end up getting hit. If I try to jump, that's an anti-air. If I try to jump backwards, that's an anti-air. If I try to jump forwards, that's an anti-air. What if I backdash? Holy shit, he gets a fucking counter. That's not good for Johnny, okay? So this is something Johnny has to worry about, right? So what can we do here? I can flawless block him. That's an option, right? And the option that you saw there was fatal blow, right? I can definitely do that, right? And like I said, I can flawless block him if I want to, right? So we cannot backdash, we cannot jump. What other options do we have here? Oh, by the way, we cannot neutral duck, right? So he shut out, or just off of him changing up the normal, he just shut out majority of our options here. So now we basically have to be stationary and we have to deal with this pressure, right? And the mind game of knowing what normal he's gonna go for, just in general, right? So this is a good way of checking the Johnny Cage player, or just checking the opponent just in general, depending on the matchup, right? Basically depending on the character that you're going against, right? So like I said, he shuts out our ability to neutral duck, he shuts out our ability to jump, he shuts out our ability to backdash. So our mobility options are just out of here. One of our main options, which is neutral ducking, is out of here, but we can fatal blow or we can flawless block, right? But there's one more option that we haven't explored yet, right? Just because an individual is plus on block doesn't necessarily mean that, especially in this game, doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot necessarily interrupt the opponent. You do have to challenge things like this, right? You have to challenge things like this for a reason. The reason why you need to challenge things like this, right, is because if you've labbed, you know that you can challenge it. But the reason why I'm saying you need to challenge things like this is because you would be very surprised at how you can just get out of situations like this, even though the opponent is plus on block, right? If you know your frame data. So his forward 3, right, is minus 11 on block, right? So we can either just sit here and just bet that he's going to stagger. We can kind of gamble on that, right? So that's an option right there, is that we can punish that. Or we can interrupt and challenge the Jax player. Now, the forward 3 is a good way of checking Johnny Cage if he was a backdash, if he was a jump, if he was a neutral crouch, right? The standing 1 is a good option. If Johnny Cage is trying to challenge the Jax player, right? And I'm gonna show you what I mean by that. So as you can clearly see, his forward 3 is 9 frames on startup. His standing 1 is leaving him +1 on block, and he's going for the forward 3 afterwards. So if you do the frame data correctly, it will actually come out at 8 frames instead of 9 frames, and the forward 3 is what I'm referring to. So what does that mean exactly? That means that we don't have to put up. You can get out my face. Now let's play neutral instead of MKX. Let's do this. You see what I'm saying? So it's all about muscle memory and having the knowledge and actually labbing, right? But the muscle memory is very important, right? And then, like I said before in my other video about being predictable, if opponents are doing this consistently, right? You know, and you know about it, like, dude, you shouldn't be letting them get away with shit like this. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, I just don't give a shit to try because I just don't care. I don't care. I already know what it is with Mortal Kombat. That's why I don't try. I don't give a fuck. Even though I know about these situations, I don't care. That's the reason why you guys always see me go for a down 4 instead of certain shit that I'm showing you here, right? Because I had a guy before, he wanted me to join a tournament, and I happily declined that shit. I do not give a fuck. I don't have enough time to be going to a goddamn tournament. I got more important shit to worry about than going to a damn tournament. So if you guys want to go to a tournament or you guys want to get better or something like that, then I guess this video is for you, is what I'm saying. So we're going to continue on. So as you can clearly see, right, the Jax player got completely interrupted here. So what is our other options, right? We can down 1 him. What if I go for my down 4? As you can clearly see, like I said before, his forward 3 is no longer 9 frames because he's +1 on block. It'll come out at 8 frames, which means what? If I go for my standing 2, we trade. We're trading. Doesn't matter how fast you do it. If it's all timed correctly by the Jax player, it doesn't matter how fast you mash this down 4 or this standing 2, it does not fucking matter. You both are trading, right? So, like I said, you can either commit into the fatal blow, and that's if he's staggering. I'm pretty sure you can beat out his what was I about to say? I'm pretty sure you can beat out his commitment into the string, meaning like he does the full string, right? When you do your fatal blow, like I'm pretty sure you can stuff that. I could be wrong though, but don't quote me on that. So you can flawless block him, or you can interrupt him because your mobility options are stricken, like they're gone. Like you can't do anything about that, right? So that 4-3 is really good for checking options that Johnny Cage has access to. Another option is just simply down 1ing if you just want to play it safe. And as you can clearly see, this is what happens, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Jax player has to put up with this because we still haven't explored what Jax could do. So, let's see here. If the Jax player reads that you're going to go for what he thinks you're going to go for, I'm going to show you what happens. Now, this standing 2 is 11 frames, so that's not a good combo string, or normal. Excuse me, that's not a good normal to go for. Not unless you believe that the Johnny Cage player is going to respect, and then that's when you go for like that multi-hitting combo string that gives him a mix-up, or he can become plus on block and shit like that. So that's another thing, but we're not going to talk about that right now. So keep in mind, his standing 1 is +1 on block, like I said, and his second standing 1 comes out at 7 frames, right? So that means that if I was to go for this standing 1, right, we would more than likely trade. So the Jax player is not going to just sit there and just accept that. He's not going to go for that option, right? The option he's going to go for is neutral ducking, right? Because he does not want to trade, right? He's not trying to trade with you. You understand what I'm saying? Hopefully that was quick enough. No, that wasn't quick enough. I got to do it a little bit faster. Hopefully that was fast enough. So as you can clearly see, right, he can neutral duck, and this is one of his options, right? Is neutral ducking, right? So we believe he's going to neutral duck. One of our ways is to down 1 him, right? Another way is possibly going for a reversal, rising star. We could possibly do this, but you got to keep in mind he has those options, right? Now, one thing we can do is we can create new neutral ground, but the problem with creating new neutral ground is what? It goes right back to that situation I just showed you guys. Or he could change up and then go directly for the 4-2 if he thinks that you are going to respect, because the idea of this is to get the opponent on the defending side, which is the opposing side, to respect. But you got to earn my respect, right? In order for me not to do these certain type of actions, you got to check me. right? You'll hear a lot of high level players say that. You got to check me. You got to do this. You got to do that. This doesn't just apply in close range engagements. This also applies in the neutral, especially when you're within mid range engagements, which is the footsie range engagements. You got to keep that in mind as well. So you got to keep all this shit in mind. You understand what I'm saying? So I could just literally walk backwards, create new neutral ground, and now Jack's player has to probably go back to what he was doing, right? Now, we're gonna go for the 4-2, right? See that? What does that mean? That means that, you know, that'll come out at 11 frames because he's +1 on block. But what's the problem? His startup time is too fucking high. So that means that I can interrupt that very easily. What if I jump? Still an anti-air, still an anti-air, still an anti-air. It's not good. If I backdash, I don't get punished, right? But I would have to block this situation, right? Okay, I can do that to him, right? So he's still shutting out my mobility options in a sense, just with those advancing normals such as the 4-3 and the 4-2, right? But the 4-2 can get interrupted a lot easier than the 4-3 because it has a higher startup time, right? Now, this is something that goes over people's heads a lot, right? Simply creating new neutral ground. People believe that they have to be stationary even when you're playing offensively, and that's not true. Especially if you're actually labbing situations, it's not true. Jax is going to backdash here and watch what happens. Because I think he's going to go for the 4-3, right? Which will come out at 8 frames if he was to do it. Well, look what Jax did. I'm committing, right? Now this is where proximity OS comes into play for Johnny, because I could literally just do this right here and then buffer a special move, right? And still be able to block. This is why I don't do those proximity OSing shit. I would rather have to think on my own rather than, you know, depending on that bullshit. And that's just my opinion. But as you can clearly see, right, Jax can simply just backdash. I'm doing this as fast as I can, and I'm mashing it, and I cannot hit him. Not even with the standing 2, which the standing 2 and close range engagement with Jax is not going to be that helpful, not unless he had went for something completely different. But as you can clearly see, right, like my standing 1, my main normal that can save me from that 4-3 is being completely obliterated right now just by a simple backdash where Jax is creating new neutral ground. Now, what if I do a down 1? Doesn't matter. I'm down 1ing, right? And the reason why I say it doesn't matter is because if you are mistiming this, right, just like that, that's what happens. But if you're timing it correctly, that's what happens, right? So you got to keep this in mind, right? And then you can go for your gelling situation, and you know, you get the idea of that, right? So the down 1, like I said, you know, you got to time that shit. You know what I mean? You can't just sit there and wait for a split second and then boom, you whip. Now the nigga might punish you because of that. You know what I mean? So you got to be on point with your shit. You got to react. You got to react. And part of this is reacting as well, right? So we got a down 4 that'll shut that option out. You understand what I'm saying? So this is where it gets fucked up, right? This is why Johnny doesn't necessarily want to be close to Jax. I'm gonna show you some shit, right? And then after that, I guess I'll end the video. Jax hasn't gone for any of his pokes yet. And one of his pokes links into a second hit, which I'm pretty sure everybody knows what that is. It's his down 1-2, correct? It's a mid-high, right? So he can do that bullshit to you right here. And the second hit is actually safe, except for the fact that the second hit is a high, right? So it's 50-50, basically. Like, it's a gamble, basically. So his down 1 is 7 frames, right? So the Jax player, right, he don't have to put up with your shit, right? And keep in mind, his down 1 has pretty good range on it, right? And he's -5, so he's relatively safe. So if I try to walk backwards, that's what happens. If I try to jump, that's what happens. So he's shutting out majority of my options. I can't even backdash because that leads into a counter, right? If I try to down 1, his down 1 is no longer 7 frames because he's +1 on block. It's coming out at 6 frames. Johnny Cage doesn't have a 6 frame normal, right? Now, if he was going against Geras or basically the close range fighters that are playing MKX, basically, they would be able to kind of contest these buttons by, you know, just challenging with a down 1, which is 6 frames. I mean, Geras is a better example mainly because his down 1 has the most range, just like Jax's down 1. They both have the best down ones when it comes to range, I think, and it being fast on startup. Now, there's other characters with really good range on their down one as well, but it's not fixed range like Jax or Gears' down one. But anyway, that's besides the point. So as you can clearly see, he's shutting out a lot of my options here, and this is a good way of him stuffing a lot of my options very easily, right? And there's nothing I can do. He literally can just check me with this poke and condition me not to move, which means that I'm respecting at that point. But what are our options here? I can't fatal blow, so this is just shutting out every option. My mobility options, my ability to neutral duck, my ability to fatal blow. I could flawless block this nigga, but I mean, can he stuff my up 2 attempt? You understand what I'm saying? Obviously, you know, I still have the ability to go for the up 3, right? But this is when things get interesting, right? This is when things get interesting. So he goes for the standing 1, and then he goes directly into this, right? So like I said, we could flawless block, right? What did he just do? He just stuffed my up 2. He literally just stuffed my fucking up 2. That's literally what Jax just did, is he stuffed my up 2. So what is my option? I can't up 2 him to get damage. I have to up 3 him and then, you know, create a spacing situation or try to open him up to where I can formulate some form of damage. But you got to ask yourself, when its situation comes, is it even worth doing that? Or should you just hold block, right? You got to pay attention to your opponent's meter, your health, the opponent's health. Is it really worth going for it, right? Do you need those resources? You got to ask yourself all these questions mid-fight, and you got to remember this shit as well and predict what the opponent's going to do before they do it and anticipate what they're going to do before they fucking do it, right? You got to know what they're thinking in a sense. Okay, they might try to stuff my option. They probably think that I'm going to sit there and just flawless block the, you know, the down 1 and try to go for the up 2 or something like that, because they might think that they might think that, how should I put it? The Jax player might think that I'm trying to flawless block his down 1. So I could be like, okay, the player's probably going to sit here and commit into the down 1 too, because he thinks that I'm going to try and flawless block his down 1 and go for the up 2. So he knows that he can stuff my up 2. You got to think about that shit, right? And you got to know for a fact, like, okay, well, I can't just flawless block him with an up 2, because look what happens. Like that's what happens. And he shuts out a lot of my mobility options. He stuffs a lot of my normals. I can't do anything, so basically I'm stationary. I have to deal with this type of pressure that Jax is dishing out towards me, right? So this is where things get interesting, right? What is he doing? He's going for a move that links into another move, which happens to be a hive. That's the reason why paying attention to the move type is very important, because when you think all hope is lost, that's not necessarily the case. So if I think he's going to commit because he's trying to stuff my up 2 attempt, that's what happens. This is also what happens, right? I can fuck Jax's shit up, right? You see where I'm going with this? But now this is where it gets kind of funny, right? This is where it gets kind of funny, right? Let's see here. Even though you know about you either one, you can flawless block his up 2, or not his up 2, excuse me. I'm thinking about another character. But you could flawless block his down 1 attempt, right? And the way that Jax player can respond if they read that you're going to try and up 2 their down 1 because you believe they're going to stagger their down 1, right? Their response to that would be, in this matchup at least, is to go for the full string, basically, which is the down 1-2 to stuff your option, and then they can get some form of damage to a certain degree. Now, you also have to ask yourself, off of the second hit, right? Let me whip this shit. It doesn't actually connect, in a sense, right? So I'll put Johnny on auto guard. As you can clearly see, the second hit doesn't connect, right? As you can clearly see, right? Like it's not connecting. So if anything, the Jax player would more than likely get some form of hit advantage. More than likely, that's literally what his option would be, is to get some form of hit advantage, and he'll get a hit advantage of 15 frames. You can test this out in the corner as well, because I'm not a Jax main, so as you can clearly see, it's not connecting. Not even that's connecting. Let's see here. That's not connecting. So the most it seems like he'll get is a fatal blow. But as you can clearly see, that's not even the case. So the most he'll get is just hit advantage, just in general offense, right? Which is still really good for him because he can create a strike throw mind game. He can shimmy you and shit like that, which is part of strike throw mind games and stuff like that. But here's another thing that the Jax player can do, which I didn't show yet. And this is the reason why I say it's kind of funny to me. So let me get that. So let me see if I can do this correctly though. Oh yeah, that's right. He can't cancel into the fatal blow. What normal was that I was trying to show you guys actually? I don't even fucking remember. Because it wasn't his down one. I don't know why I thought it was his down one. It was another normal. I can't remember. What normal was that? It'll probably come back to me soon. It more than likely will come back to me soon because it's not his down one. Because when you flawless block pokes in this game, they can't go for any special move and shit. And it's definitely not his down one that I'm. Damn. Why did I think it was his down one? I think it was his forward three. Yeah, I think it was his forward three. Hold on. Let's see here. Now, in terms of the flawless blocking, the Jax player is going to have to figure out what they can do to stop that up two attempt. Jax's response for this situation is his fatal blow. So hold on, let me see if I can get this. Yeah. So as you can clearly see, this is the reward that the Jax player would get if they read that I was going to flawless block the 4-3 staggered attempt. You know, but this depends on the situation, just in general. You know what I mean? So you can up three, but you know, the Jax player will get punished for doing what they just did, right? So you got to watch out from that fatal blow attempt from the Jax player as well. They could definitely do that to stuff your option if, you know, they're actually lagging and shit. But what was I about to show you guys? Oh yeah, the down one shit, right? So like I said, he could stuff basically every option that Johnny has except for flawless blocking. Or Johnny could just turtle up and just block and just wait until Jax is done. You know, he has to worry about Jax's second hit in a sense, because Jax can get some form of, you know, hit advantage and stuff like that. But this is what ends up happening, right? I think I said it before in the video. Remember the cycle, right? So this is where it gets funny, right? So what ends up happening is that the Jax player ends up just doing that. That's why it's funny, because it just goes right back into the same cycle. Again, to a certain degree, right? That's going to be the response in a sense, right? But then again, I mean, if they're getting flawless block, what would their response truly be? It would be that, which is going to get you to think. I guess that's when you can say Ducko Essen comes into play or whatever the case may be. But Jax has like an overhead, so it's like, you know, and a low starter. So it's, I mean, like, flawless blocking him is not going to be that easy, because then like they can just be like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? Like they could just like stand your ass back up. Like, you know what I mean? So that's what's funny about this, is that he's negating the flawless block shit, right? So you still have to deal with a command grab. You still have to deal with, you know, a regular throw. You still have to deal with a whole bunch of shit. And this is what I'm saying. MKX at its finest. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, this is basically advanced learning, I guess. I know I kind of was slow with this video in terms of talking and stuff like that. It's just like I'm really tired and shit, and then like my brain is hurting a bit because I'm in college and shit. I'm studying this shit or whatever. But anyway, hopefully this video was helpful for you guys who want to get better, I guess. I mean, you know, it's a lot of labbing that you got to do, a lot of situational awareness type shit that you got to do. The 1-2, as you can clearly see here, this also happens as well with the same situation. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some space right there, but it's relatively the same thing. Even though, like, if you look at their feet right there, if Jax goes for the standing one, right? Let me get back in the light. If Jax goes for the standing one at close range,
That's the distance of their feet right there. But if Jax was to go for this that 1-2, you notice that their feet stays relatively the same right here. So it could be different in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So like, hold on. Hopefully that was timed correctly. No, it was not. Yeah, that wasn't timed correctly. Yeah, that one. I think that was timed. Yeah. So as you can clearly see, the situation is very different. He's a lot closer to me, and this is another thing that you got to keep in mind is the spacing. So like I said, pay attention to the feet. Pay attention to the spacing, basically. But in this situation, I was showing off the feet and like the distance. So right here, if he was to go for the 1-2, he's significantly close to me. So I would have to stay stationary, and then I would have to, you know, do shit like this to Jax, right? But see, that's when the 4-3 comes out. And if he goes for like the 4-3, you know what I'm saying? You know, if he goes for the 4-3, you know, he's still +1 on block, right? So I know what I can do off of this situation just in general. And I still haven't even talked about the jailing situation because there is a little bit of space that ends up happening. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to Jax's standing one. So it's all about just labbing the situation and figuring out what you can and cannot do. And that's the shit that high-level players have over a lot of opponents, especially with experience and understanding how, you know, characters work and operate. And of course, they use option selects up to yin yang. So hopefully this video was helpful for some of you guys out there that were trying to learn this and trying to understand this type of stuff. You don't necessarily have to be stationary. A lot of times players believe that if they just stay stationary, you know, they'll be fine, when you don't even know the full situation of what you can and cannot do. So this is just something that I wanted to talk about. I know this video is pretty long, but I wanted to give you guys as much detail as possible so that way you can go into training mode and you can lab this yourself. If you're trying to play competitively, I personally don't give a shit about it. But if you guys do, then that's all good in the hood, you know what I'm saying? But hopefully you guys are doing well out there. Be safe out there. I'll catch you guys in the next video. If you guys also want more situations like this, just spam it down in the comment section down below. But without further ado, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.